Hello, this is going to be a very quick video, and the reason I'm making it is because quite a few people have asked how to make aircraft. So I'm going to take you through how I made, or how the A320, so I'm going to use the A320 default here, how it has been made and how I have modded it slightly as well. So you can use this process then to make any aircraft that you want, and it makes things a lot easier when you know how to do it. And of course it's pretty simple, it's not difficult at all, and once you get the idea. So I'll open my aircraft folder.
Menu, apps, search, unknown, everything, edit, blank.
Right, we'll type in
List eurofly 2, path C, date unknown, eurofly everything, list
eurofly
2,
2
audio 2, aircraft 1 of 30.
and aircraft. Right, so let me first show you the main files that comprise an aircraft, that are the structure of the aircraft. So if we just keep going down all my aircraft to get to the A320 default.
Airbus A319, Airbus
Yeah.
Airbus A320 120 of 460,
Right.
date model, type edit VLC, Airbus A320 118 of 465.
So you can see there's 465 files in my aircraft folder. There's a lot of stuff in here. So this is the A320. This is the first file you're going to want to make for any aircraft. Now the way you do this is in Notepad. It has to be in Notepad, and this is a file type
Type edit air file read only.
air file. So whenever you save this file, and the way I tend to do it is I copy out the specs of another aircraft and then modify them. So I'll copy them out of this Notepad file, for example. Let's just say, for argument's sake, I wanted to make a let's make a fictional plane. Let's say Airbus bring out the Airbus A3100, and I say, right, okay, I want to make this plane. I could take this A320 file, copy out its specs, just copy them, and then copy them into another Notepad file and modify them that way there. So it has to be in Notepad. It has all the aircraft specs, which I'll show you in a minute. It has to be saved with the .air extension, so whatever your aircraft name is. So mine would be, for example, if I was making this new plane, Airbus A3100.air. No spaces, just .air after it, and you have to have your save as type combo box thing set to all files, and just make sure where you tab across here the file,
Type edit air file read only, row 15, type column 3.
the type that it says air file. If it says a text file, you haven't done it right and it's not going to work. Okay, let me just show you what's in the air file then.
Airbus A320 Notepad, text editor, edit, aircraft.
So the first line is just aircraft. That has to be there. So of course, as I say, you can copy this out of this plane or any plane, and if you want to make your own, then you have
Equals 63.
weight. So that's weight in tons. I would advise trying to find the empty weight of the aircraft. That's what I usually do, because obviously you're going to add fuel and stuff in the game, so you want to have the empty weight.
Max speed equals 870.
That's in kilometers per hour, always kilometers per hour, and that's your max speed, of course.
Max range equals 6100.
That's the maximum range of the aircraft.
Max height equals 12,500.
Obviously max
Takeoff
height.
speed equals 241.
That's its takeoff speed.
Landing speed equals 241.
And landing speed.
Max passengers equals 179.
Passengers.
Category equals 2.
And the category 1, 2 or 3.
Land.
And that is it. So it's very simple, it's very easy to understand, and that's how you make your plane. You just have to make the decisions on the category and things. And say for takeoff and landing speeds, I would advise just Google it. You'll probably find some rough guides. If the plane you're making is it's not very well known, you might struggle to find an exact takeoff speed on the internet, so you might just want to try and generally make it up, and no, well, not make it up, but you know, just think about the aircraft that you're making. How heavy is it and things, and what do you think the general takeoff speed would be? I mean, so you've got an Airbus A320 here with a takeoff speed of 240 kilometers per hour. Okay, so we'll get out of this air file. That's the first file you have to make for an aircraft. And just a note as well, all these files have to be called exactly the same thing. It won't work if they're not called the same names. So you have to have your air file named Airbus A320 or whatever. You have to have your DEF file, name that, and you have to have your audio file, name that. Okay.
Aircraft window, items view list. Airbus A320 119 of 465.
This is a
Type edit def file read only, row 16, type column 3.
def file. And again, you do it in Notepad. This is a very small file, but quite important. This relates to the sound of your aircraft. So you're going to want to make the def file after you've got your audio. So the third file that makes up an aircraft is the
Airbus A320. Type edit VLC media file. .wav. Read only row 17. Type column B.
VLC. So you're going to want to find some audio, or of course you could just use one of the default audios. It's up to you. It has to be in WAV format, so I just use Audacity, to be honest with you, and if I want audio for an aircraft, go into Skype, what am I talking about? Go into YouTube or something, find audio, the aircraft, and record it in Audacity, and then just edit it and make sure it all works, and then just export it as a WAV file and call it the name of my aircraft. Now the def file relates to the sound, and essentially all the def file does is controls the pitch of the aircraft and the sound. So I'm going to show you now in the def file for the A320.
Airbus A320. No, 11,500. 14,500. 30,000.
So you've got three numbers in here, all separated by a line. You've got 11,500, 14,500 and 30,000. These relate to the pitch of your aircraft's engine. Now the way I do this is I have an application called Frequency Tester, and that will test the frequency of the sound. So I import the sound into there, and then it has a slider that I can test. Now you may not have that, and if you don't have that, then it doesn't matter. You can sort of guess the frequencies as well. So the first number, 11,500, is the idle pitch of the aircraft. So this is when you've just switched the engines on. So like I say, if you have this frequency tester application, or you have a form of it, or some sort of software that can pitch the sound up and down and show you the frequency, then that will be quite helpful for this. If not, I would recommend you just guess a number and try it. If it doesn't work, you can change it. So I would say a good number for idle tends to be anything between 10,000 and probably 20,000 is a good number for your idle pitch. So you might want to go for about 14,000, 15,000. This one is 11,500, and that is the pitch of the sound, or the frequency of the sound at idle. The next one
14,500.
is 14,500. This is the frequency or the pitch of the sound at 100. So essentially when you are at 100 kilometers an hour in your aircraft, that is the assigned pitch. So it essentially tells the game this is how much you need to pitch it up. So from 0, which is idle, which is 11,500, to when you get to 100 kilometers an hour, where the engine has to be at 14,500 frequency, it has to pitch it up 3,000, and that's how you hear the engine pitch up. I would personally recommend adding about 5,000 onto your idle frequency. So if we were making a new aircraft and we'd set the idle frequency to be 14,000, you might then want to go and put your frequency for 100 kilometers an hour, maybe about 20,000. That would probably be pretty fair. And then the third value,
30,000.
which is 30,000 on this aircraft, you'll see that's significantly higher, is what frequency the engines need to be at by your takeoff speed. So in the Airbus it's 240, so it's then saying, of course, from 100 kilometers an hour at 14,500, by the time I reach takeoff speed, whatever that takeoff speed is, I need to be at 30,000, or the engine needs to be at 30,000 pitch. Again, I would recommend you increase this quite a lot. So if you have, let's say, an idle of 15,000, a 100 speed, or I don't know what the best name for this is, a 100 kilometers an hour frequency of 20,000, you might want to have your takeoff you might want to have your takeoff frequency at about maybe 32,000, something like that. You want a good increase in the frequency pitch, because obviously it's logical that as you speed up in an aircraft, as you take off, because between 0 and 100 you're probably going to be taxiing, but as you really start to apply power and take off, the engines do pitch up more rapidly. So you're probably going to want a pretty rapid pitch up by about 10, 12,000, something like that. So that's the def file really. You just need to remember you have your idle frequency, which is usually, like I say, between 10 and 20,000 probably.
14,500.
Your second frequency for 100 kilometers an hour, which is in this aircraft 14,500. I would say again, my tip for that is add 5,000 on to your idle number, and then 30,000, which is your takeoff frequency, which is usually, I would say, at least add 10, 12,000 onto your 100 kilometers an hour speed. I hope that makes sense. I might be overcomplicating it a bit there, so if you need a clarification, then feel free to ask. But that is the basics. Yeah, it does help if you have a frequency tester, but like I say, if you don't, just go with my tips and experiment, have a go, fly the plane. If you think it sounds okay, then great. If not, then you can always come back into the def file and modify the frequency of the sounds here. Now there's one more thing you can do to make an aircraft more realistic. Now I'm just Alt F4 in that. You might not have these sounds, but you can add specific sounds to an aircraft. For example, flaps, gear, brakes, seat belts, things like that. So if you have specific sounds for an aircraft that you want to put in, for example, if you've managed to get a gear sound from somewhere that you think is really good, you can put that in. And the way you do that is you just make a file folder. Let's say we're going to modify the flaps of this aircraft, this Airbus A320, which I have done. Let's say we want to modify the flaps. You make a file folder called Airbus A320, and in there you have WAV files, and you would call them flaps on and flaps off, and gear up and gear down if you want to modify the gear. Essentially, it's just the same file names as Eurofly uses for the defaults. You don't have to do this, this is just an extra, and you probably won't do this, especially if you don't have FSX like I do, because I managed to get some of the sounds out of FSX and put them in here. But yes, so you make a file folder called Airbus A320, and if you say had some flap and gear sounds, you could put them in, making sure they're titled flaps on, flaps off, gear up, gear down, no capitals, no spaces. That's how you would do that. And then you could have other things like brakes and seat belts, and you would just have to go into the audio folder of Eurofly and see what Eurofly called them. So I think, for example, the brakes off sound in Eurofly, it just titles it brakes off, literally just brakes off, no spaces, capitals. So then you would just have to make a file, put it in that file folder and call it brakes off, and you'd have a new brakes off sound. You can also modify the switch and click sounds as well. If you want more in-depth on how to modify specific sounds for aircraft, for example switches, clicks and things for the aircraft, if you actually have sounds that you need to put in there, I mean, don't obviously contact me to do it if you haven't, but if you have sounds that you want to put in there and you don't get it, then I can explain it to you a bit more, but that isn't necessary. All you need for an aircraft is your air file with the specs, the def file, remember, with the idle, the 100 kilometers per hour and the takeoff speed frequencies, and then your .wav file with the actual sound of the aircraft in. And other than that, that's it. You can make some really good aircraft. I've made lots, as you saw. My aircraft folder has what was it, 465 files in and folders, so there's definitely a lot of room here to have a lot of fun and make lots of new planes.
Eurofly everything list profile.
Right, that's pretty much it. Like I say, if you have any queries and you're not sure, because it is a little complicated. I mean, the sound and the air files are pretty self-explanatory, but then you've got the def file and the adding extra sounds to planes, which may be a bit more confusing. So let me know, but hopefully this clears a couple of problems up. Thanks for watching.
List exit. Stop recording.